So we have an idea. Today we're going to dig into the details. The key to making sure we're meeting our writing goals is clarity. And if we're vague about what our idea is actually about, then we don't have enough clarity to get started. So today is all about fixing that. We're going to figure out the who, what, when, where, why, and how of your project premise, and the key beats to include in your story before you even start your beat sheet. I've actually heard from another writer that until you can succinctly pitch your idea to a friend, you're not ready to write it yet. Like the process of pitching it out, refining it, and getting clear on exactly what the idea is helps you figure out what direction you're driving in when you start to write your project. So we're going to answer all of our journalist questions. There's this concept that the writer came up with of plotters versus pantsers. And plotters are people that kind of plot everything out before they start writing, and pantsers are the ones that kind of just write it and see how it goes. So I would love to know if you're a plotter or a pantser. Please comment that below. But I do think this process is for plotters and for pantsers because it doesn't get too granular. It just gives you an overall top-down view of what your story actually is. So even if you're a fly by the seat of your pants kind of person, I still recommend doing this exercise. If you're in the SBA community, you can do this section of your workbook today. Otherwise, you can just grab a piece of paper and answer these questions about your project. First is who. Who is your story about? Who is your protagonist? Pretty simple, right? But don't just tell me their name, tell me a little bit about them. Try to give me at least 1 or 2 sentences to describe them, and a few character traits, one of which should be a flaw. An example being a jaded, family-oriented chemistry teacher, or a pretty self-destructive cafe owner. Next is what. What are they struggling with in your story? What do they want and what are they doing to get it? This chemistry teacher is craving change and after a cancer diagnosis needs money to protect his family and leave a legacy. So he decides to use his skills for a drug operation with his former student. So for our what, we want to know what is the core conflict connected to their core want in your series and also what they are doing to achieve it. What is lighting a fire under them to take action? Our next 2 are where and when. These are our world questions, right? Where are we? When are we? Think about what year it is, what city or specific location we're in, the nature of that location, and also how it relates to your character. Is this an environment that's comfortable for them? Are they a fish out of water? What are the rules of this world that may or may not be challenging for them? I encourage you to get as specific as you can about this. Don't just give me a general city, give me a specific area of that city. Give me an idea of the vibe, what's the neighborhood like, who are the types of people that live there. So instead of Los Angeles, Insecure is specifically in Inglewood, Los Angeles. Instead of New York City, Girls is specifically set in Williamsburg. So going back to our Breaking Bad example, it's set in Albuquerque, straddling the quaint domestic life and seedy drug underbelly of the city. It's also set in present day and around the midlife crisis of this character after a cancer diagnosis. The next question is why. This is where we get into their character psychology and motivations. What is driving them? Why do they want what they want, and why are they so determined to get it? This helps provide stakes and also tells us why this protagonist is really vital to the story. For when, I would also think about why is this moment in time significant for your protagonist? Why are we starting the series or film at this time in their life on this particular day? So for Walter White, we have a deep desire for him to secure his family's future after his cancer diagnosis, a deep desire to change his current circumstances, and also the ticking clock of he's running out of time. He has a terminal diagnosis. And the last thing is how. So the writer how, right? How are you executing this? What is the tone? What is the style, the format of the movie or the show? What is the special sauce that you bring to the execution of the project? So once we've answered these big picture questions, the next thing that we're going to do is define our big 3 for your core characters. The big 3 being want, need, and flaw. What do they ultimately want? This is usually going to be the core drive of your story. If you're doing television, you want to make sure that your character has a want within the episode that's connected to a broader kind of super objective for the series or season in a serialized format. For film, you want to think about what is the core want that creates the engine drive of the feature film, i.e., find Nemo and bring him home, or get Olive to San Diego for the Little Miss Sunshine pageant. You could also think broadly about what the character wants, like in life. What is the thing that they want out of life? In Little Miss Sunshine, Dwayne wants to be a pilot. It doesn't need to be super complicated, but we want to know kind of what those deeper wants are for each of your characters. Next is need. So while we want things, sometimes we don't realize the thing that we actually need in life. Kendall Roy may want to be CEO of Waystar Royco, but what he needs is probably some family therapy and like to go on a picnic with his dad and throw around a baseball or something. I don't know. Need is usually different from their core want and connects more to the emotional journey that you're taking your character through. Last is flaw, the fatal flaw of your character. The major flaw that they have should be the thing that is keeping them from achieving their want. What aspect of your character makes their own life harder? How are they holding themselves back from achieving their goals? Going back to Finding Nemo for a second, Marlin's goal is obviously to find Nemo and bring him home. He needs to trust Nemo and Dory and let go of his fear, but he is overprotective and paralyzed by fear of loss due to his grief. This gives us a clear point A, the point where his flaw is very, very prevalent at the beginning of the film, and a point B where he acknowledges and evolves towards his need and the journey that helps him get there, which is finding Nemo. Now, because Finding Nemo has a happy ending, he acknowledges his need in the end. Not every character needs to. A character that doesn't acknowledge their need in favor of their want usually will have a negative character trajectory, like Walter White, for example. Part 3 is defining our core conflict. What are the core conflict or conflicts that exist in your story? I'll put up a list of the most common conflicts here. The most common ones are going to be person versus person, which is your classic protagonist, antagonist situation. Person versus self, which is an internal struggle that's usually driven by the flaws of the character. Picture a self-destructive character like Fleabag or Eleanor Shellstrop from The Good Place. Person versus society, which is going to be kind of a person going up against the system or their government or kind of the social norms around them. So you can picture things like The Handmaid's Tale, for example. There are a bunch of others, but basically you want to think of the premise of your series or feature film and decide what core conflicts you're going to explore. Now that we have that core conflict, we're going to think about our engine. So in TV, like I said, the engine is going to be the thing that generates conflict week after week. So for example, in Succession, the engine might be the power struggle over control of Waystar Royco. So as long as people want to be the person in power, the CEO, but don't have that, they can keep fighting until the series is over. Going back to The Bear, we have the weekly chaos of trying to run the restaurant. In features, this is going to be more what drives your character towards the ultimate resolution of the film. In Rocky, this would be training to win his big fight. In Booksmart, it would be experiencing one wild night of high school before graduation. Your engine should be specific enough to drive your story, but general enough to sustain your format, at least in a television space. Okay. We've reached part 5, which is writing your logline. We're going to synthesize all of this information into a powerful sentence or two. Your logline should include your protagonist with a descriptor of who they are, their goal or the engine if this is in television, the obstacle or complication of them achieving their goal. This could also be the antagonist or the antagonistic force, as well as the world and the genre. In television, if I'm reading your logline, I should have an idea of what the week to week of the series is. In a feature, I should have an idea of like the core journey or drive of your character. I'll throw up a template for you to kind of plug and play your logline. Of course, you can rearrange the syntax of the sentence. This is just to get you started. So in a world, a description of protagonist does or tries to blank, but when complication happens, blank. So an example would be from Finding Nemo. After his son is captured in the Great Barrier Reef and taken to Sydney, a timid clownfish sets out on a journey to bring him home. Or for Breaking Bad, when he's diagnosed with terminal cancer, a mild-mannered high school chemistry teacher breaks bad, plunging into the world of meth production to ensure his family's financial future. These are just examples. So the first version of your logline is usually never the best version. We kind of have to play around with it until we find the right one. The key here is just to synthesize the core idea that you're exploring in your film or television show so that you have a clear North Star to write towards. What's great about this is that if you look at the logline when you use this kind of structure, it gives you an idea of the core beats that need to be included in your story, giving you a skeleton that you can work off of instead of jumping in blind headfirst and backwards. So if I'm looking at this Breaking Bad example, I can pick out a few things that have to happen in the television pilot in order to set up the premise. He has to be diagnosed with cancer. We have to establish that he's a chemistry teacher and he has that skill. He needs to meet the person that will shepherd him into the world of meth and drugs, and he needs to actually make the decision to jump headfirst into that world, right? 4 beats. This gives me a starting point, and then from there, I can dig deeper into the core beats of my story. So today, your homework is to finish up the premise section of the workbook. If you are in the StoryBrain Academy community, you can actually DM me your logline, and I will give you feedback. So that is the end of phase 1. Congrats on completing day 4. And tomorrow we will dive into your process. So make sure to join our Artist's Way for Screenwriters workshop if you are available to come live. Otherwise, I will catch you in day 5.